You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hi, we're Enterprise-Splaining, the podcast where we explain Star Trek Enterprise to each other and to you. I'm Maria, and these are my co-hosts Bill.
Yo!
And Jamie.
Hi.
Today we're going to be talking about the Star Trek Enterprise episode Detained. However, I'm the only person here who has actually watched it, so it's my job to explain to my co-hosts what happened on the episode. But before we get into that, let's first talk a little bit about last week's episode. Last week, Jamie told us about the episode Oasis. Bill and I were finally able to watch it. So, Bill, now that we've seen it, anything that you noticed that you'd like to talk about or add to Jamie's thoughts from last week?
I agree with Jamie's assessment that this was a good episode, but only in the sense that this was 3/4 of a good episode as opposed to 1/4 of a good episode. Yeah, it's like watching a little kid get better at t-ball. No, this was absolutely fine. The only problem I had with this episode in watching it was that they made a big deal out of the mystery, and the mystery wasn't a big deal. Like, when they're speaking to that traitor at the first episode, he sets the whole thing up as, I found this ship and there were no life signs. Then I went down and the crew chased me away. And Archer is like, what do you mean? And then they cut to the break. I was like, what was the rest of this conversation? Did this guy just throw down a smoke bomb and disappear from the episode? Clearly, this guy knew what was going on. Like, he would have explained this.
I agree. It was the ghost stuff just wasn't, like, it was immediately not ghosts.
Right. And I thought the reveal was fine. I felt like it needed a bigger hook for Rene Auberjonois, who was the quote-unquote the antagonist. He wasn't the bad guy. He had a reason for it. But, like, he needed a better hook, like, he was obsessed with keeping his daughter there, or it just needed like a bigger cliffhanger, like he was the last survivor and he died and then programmed his last hologram to keep his daughter there, and that was the whole thing of it. But it was it was a fine bit of storytelling. I have to tell you, I am absolutely in love with Connor Trenier. He is I think he may be the main character of this show.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
I think so
he gets
too.
the most screen time.
If Porthos is the beagle of the show, he is the golden Labrador of this show. He just wants to love and be loved.
He's just so happy to be part of it all.
He's so fantastic, and I just love every expression that he has. But yeah, it was a good episode. Yeah, it was fun. It was a good episode of season 1 of Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah, I usually hate a one-off romance storyline with like some character we just came across and somebody from our crew, just because it always feels like, oh, come on, we're here for like 3 days, like this is not enough time for this. But when it came to this story, and specifically when it's Trip, like I believe that Trip would be like, oh, this girl, like she likes me, and then he's so flattered that he kind of likes her too.
Oh, sure.
Right.
That's the big Trip energy we're expecting from this episode. Also, it advances the Trip-X T'Pol shipping storyline, which is always a joy anytime that shows up. Just anytime these two kids get to snipe. Well, he doesn't snipe at her; she snipes at him,
and so beautifully. So fucking beautifully. It was very funny. I had a couple things. One was Annie Wershing, who played the daughter. This was, I think it's her first credit, and I don't know if you recognized her, but she's been in a billion things. She was in 24, and she was in Star Trek Picard. She was the Borg Queen, and she is freaking amazing. And this was like one of her, I think her first credit, and then she passed away a couple of years ago, and so like Star Trek sort of bookended her career, because she started with Enterprise and Picard was almost the last thing she did, or one of the last things she did.
Wow.
So it was kind of cute.
Maria, do you agree with me? Big Cass energy.
Big Cass energy, for sure. She very much reminded me of Cass. Also, there were 2 food things that I thought were really cute. One was Trip talking about marshmallows and trying to describe them.
Yeah, that was kind of cute.
Adorable. And here's a thing. I am 50 years old, and did not know exactly what Rocky Road was. I always avoided Rocky Road because I thought it had raisins in it. And apparently it does not.
Why would ice cream have raisins in it?
I don't know.
Well, there is ice cream that has raisins in it. I mean,
I've never seen ice cream with raisins.
I don't know, but I always thought Rocky Road had some sort of dried fruit in it, which is why I've always avoided it. And now I'm real mad and want to try Rocky Road.
No,
Also-
I don't like nuts. I don't like.
Oh, I love nuts.
I'm okay with nuts. I do not believe that nuts should be in desserts. They are not a dessert.
I'm like that with fruit. I understand that. And then the other thing you could tell that Chef Dorothy was involved because of that beautiful little melon thing that
I know.
the squash.
that
Oh yeah.
the girl gave Trip to eat. It was like little melon with balls inside. It was just beautiful.
Yeah.
Renee Auberjonois criminally underused in this episode. He should have been the main focus of the episode, and the woman and Trip, that should have been flavor.
He could have done a lot more. He did give those boys a fucking masterclass in acting, though. That one
so
scene,
good.
that
Told
last
you.
monologue where he's
Yep.
just explaining himself, like, you can just see those guys. They should be taking notes
Yeah.
of how good he was.
I told you, he puts everyone else to shame, and then it shows that even there's a lot of people on the show that are like fine actors and they do their fine acting, but there's nobody that rises above that.
Well, he also had 7 seasons of learning how to make Star Trek dialogue
Yes.
sing. So
Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah,
he's
so
great.
maybe these actors will get there, but
Yeah.
right now they're doing the best they can do, but they're just not at that level.
Yeah, I agree. The other thing that I made a note about, there's a line that says where Paul says Vulcans don't imagine things. And I take very strong exception to that. You do not have to have emotions to imagine things. Imagination and curiosity are fundamental requirements for doing science.
Right.
And that is what the Vulcans are excellent at doing. And it really annoyed me that she said that.
No, I agree with you. I took that to mean imagine things in terms of hallucinate things.
That's how I
she
took
heard
it.
a noise and he said you're imagining things. It's like, well, no,
Sure.
it's a ship. Like there can be like dripping water and things. She could
Right.
have heard something. But yeah, they
Right.
wanted to do. They really went back to the ghost well. I felt like this was them doing a redo of the cocaine cave episode. It's like, okay, we learned our mistakes. Yeah.
And then the only other note I had was this great line from Renee. I don't know if y'all picked up on it, where somebody said to him, "We'd like to be friends with you, Archer or Trip or something." And he said, "I've made all the friends I need."
Yeah.
Because he
that was
literally
cool.
made all the friends he needed. It was very cute.
I totally even though I watched it multiple times, I totally missed that line and the additional meaning. This was the first episode that I had to do the description for, where I finished it and I immediately was excited that I was going to be rewatching it. What I do is I usually just watch it straight. I don't even take notes. And then like the next day or a couple days later, I'll go back and I'll watch it slower with subtitles and take all my notes. And this was the first one that I finished. And I was like, I can't wait to go back to the beginning, because I do feel like there's all these tiny little clues like that I probably didn't catch the first time. And sure enough, there was. And I feel like the show in the past, when we've talked about episodes with mysteries, the rewatch didn't give you
there's
anything
no
new.
to get you on that path. I will say Steven picked up on them being holograms really quick.
He didn't think they were ghosts.
Ghosts. Well, at the point where they were talking about the power that they needed and how their food consumption was way lower than, and I was like, okay, at this point you have all the information you need to, and he knew right away at that point. Like by then he had figured it out.
Right.
Yeah, I actually, the point when they said that there wasn't food or not enough food for everyone, I had like a lot of possible ideas. And one of the ideas was like holograms. But then I was confused because I didn't think it would work over like a whole ship. But turns out it doesn't matter. It is just working over the whole ship.
Also, Maria, is this the first time we've ever seen like Starfleet, like they need parts, like they're scavenging? I don't think we've ever seen them scavenging before.
In Enterprise or
just in anything. Like obviously
in Voyager.
there's okay, Voyager. That's it.
In Voyager, they did that a bunch. They were constantly scavenging for stuff. But yeah, I'm like, why are you scavenging? Didn't you have a plan? Was this your plan? Was the plan to scavenge?
No, they fucking don't have a plan, because at one point, the woman on the ship goes, "Where are you going next?" And Trip's like, "We don't know." And it's like, they literally have no fucking idea.
All right, monkeying around, start talking.
Mr. Babalina, Mr. Bob Babalina, Mr. Babalina.
About your podcast.
We talk about an Emmy-winning comedy series. We talk about a band who outsold the Beatles and the Stones in 1967.
Still sticking to that story, huh? Well, if you know what's good for you, you'll change your tune.
We talk about a groundbreaking multimedia project that inspired generations of artists and fans.
All right, throw the book at them.
This book is overdue. Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
Okay, it's time to talk about this week's episode. Computer, what episode will we be talking about this week?
Detained. Archer and Mayweather are detained by Tandarans in a Suliban internment camp. Learning of the Suliban's persecution by the Tandarans, Archer enlists the aid of Enterprise and his crew.
So now it's time for Two Truths and a Lie.
Yes.
I'm going to tell you 2 truths and a lie about this episode, and you can guess which is the lie. Ready?
Ready.
Number 1, Travis comes to after being knocked out and immediately just walks out of the room he was being held in. Number 2,
Okay.
Malcolm comes to after being knocked out and immediately saves Archer from an attacker. Number 3, and I'm going to need to explain this one to you, Jamie, in a minute. Archer comes to after being knocked out and immediately says, "Oh boy."
Yeah, so what's that a reference to?
So, Jamie, there are some things in this episode that I need you to understand about the show Quantum Leap.
Okay.
And so what I'm going to do, because I feel this is the easiest way to do it, is I'm going to ask the computer to explain Quantum Leap to you. Computer, explain the premise of Quantum Leap to us.
Theorizing that one could time travel within his own lifetime, Dr. Sam Beckett stepped into the Quantum Leap accelerator and vanished. He woke to find himself trapped in the past, facing mirror images that were not his own, and driven by an unknown force to change history for the better. His only guide on this journey is Al, an observer from his own time who appears in the form of a hologram that only Sam can see and hear. And so Dr. Beckett finds himself leaping from life to life, striving to put right what once went wrong, and hoping each time that his next leap will be the leap home.
So the premise is the scientist jumps into this machine where his consciousness gets put into the consciousness of people in the past, and he has to live their lives for a day or for some amount of time to fix something that went wrong in the past.
So, do those people remember after he leaves?
Don't worry about that. It is explained, but don't worry about it.
And the sort of running gag within this is because every episode would begin with him waking up in somebody else's body and dealing with this, and his tagline was he would always say, "Oh boy," in some sort of way. It was, "Oh boy."
Okay.
So Scott Bakula looks in a mirror, sees he is a black woman in the Deep South in the 1960s, and he goes, "Oh boy." Or he wakes up and he finds he is a chimpanzee and goes, "Oh boy."
That sounds like a better show than this show.
It's such a good show.
Oh, it's a fantastic show.
So wait, these 3 truths. The first one, Trip wakes up and walks out of the room.
No, Travis.
Actually, Travis.
Travis Mayweather, the African-American actor on the show.
Travis wakes up and walks out of the room. The second one, who wakes up
Malcolm comes to and immediately saves Archer from an attacker. And Archer comes to after being knocked out and immediately says, "Oh boy."
I think the second one is the lie. I think Malcolm does not wake up.
Okay, first of all, if the third one is a lie, congratulations, Maria. This was a long fucking walk to get to this joke. I think it's true, but if I'm wrong, props to you. Amazing work. 10/10. Travis just walking out of the room is a really weird pull. Like, that doesn't feel like a joke. That doesn't feel like something that you would just make up. So I'm gonna go with Malcolm wakes up and immediately saves Archer.
Okay, so you both think number 2 is the lie. We'll see who's right. Cold open. We begin in a stark-looking room. There are skylights or windows way up high on the wall with bars on them in a pattern. But we pan down to see Travis lying on the floor with his back to us. He's moving around a little like he's starting to come to, and then he rolls over and sits up wincing and sees Archer lying next to him passed out. Travis tries to wake up Archer, but he doesn't move. Travis sort of gets up, he looks around the room in confusion, and he walks to the door, which just opens. There does not seem to be a lock or anything. And he peeks out into a dingy hallway. He hears voices and footsteps, and then 2 aliens come around the corner talking. They're Suliban.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Travis ducks back out of the way, and theme song, which brings us to the Diane Warren update of the week. Jamie, over to you.
Can I just interject something here? I want to include this before we go to the Diane Warren fact of the week. So I watched the previous episode with a friend. And Jamie, you will be happy to know that I did not cheat. I watched it at one speed, and I watched the entirety of the opening credits.
I feel awful for your friend.
I will never watch the opening credits if I can help it. Sorry.
I told him what was going to be happening. It's like, I need to watch this episode. Do you want to watch it with me? He said, yeah, sure. And as soon as Faith of the Heart started playing, he went, oh, right. This is the one that has the weird opening. And then he said what we said. It was like, it's kind of weird. It's like, divorced from the song, the opening visuals of this are really, really good.
Yep.
So,
All right. Big Diane Warren news this week.
Ooh.
She has announced that she is producing a live action music driven comedy series for Disney and Disney Plus called How We Became the Biggest Band in the World. And it's going to feature a bunch of original music by her.
Cool.
okay.
And yeah, apparently she came up with the idea 5 years ago, and then
Been pitching it ever since.
Yeah, there's actually a cast. It's a bunch of young people that I have never heard of.
Of course, yeah. Mhm.
Sure.
Because it's this is a this is a Disney show, and like a Disney show for kids.
Okay.
So the description is 3 members of a mega famous pop group tell the story of their band and friendship, starting with the day they met in middle school.
Cute.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Like-
gonna feature all Diane Warren music, apparently.
Sounds like a Disney version of Merrily We Roll Along.
I guess we'll see. All right. Cool. Thanks, Jamie. So now that the theme song is done, we can get into the episode. Travis is now cautiously walking down one of the hallways, trying to figure out where he is and what's going on. It's a big building, so lots of hallways and doors, but he peeks into this big room where there's probably a dozen Suliban just wandering around doing stuff.
Wait, does this mean that the first one was true?
That is right. The first one was true.
Okay.
So me and Bill are both wrong.
No, we picked
You
number
picked-
2,
you picked
which
Malcolm.
was
Oh, wait, yeah, that's true. Okay.
So,
Okay.
all right.
Sorry.
So he peeks into a big room where there's probably a dozen Suliban just doing stuff. 2 are like playing cards at a table. 2 have like this big bucket they're carrying away from a water trough.
There's Suliban just playing cards?
Yeah, they're literally just playing cards. And as this is happening, the credits are rolling, and we see a very familiar name as the primary guest star, Dean Stockwell.
Oh shit.
Jamie, Dean Stockwell is Al in
I don't know who that
Quantum
is.
Leap. He was the hologram who helped Sam Beckett through all of his little things. Dean Stockwell and Scott Bakula
Sure.
were the 2 stars of Quantum Leap. It's a big deal.
Okay.
I was very excited to see this.
Oh, I'm terribly excited by this.
I knew you would be.
I'm so glad I did not get this episode.
Yeah, no, I am too, because I would have been real mad because you would have done this completely straight.
I'm just imagining Jamie saying, and some guy named Dean Stockwell and Maria and I losing our fucking, throwing our headphones down.
She wouldn't have even said that. We would have watched it after the fact and been like, this is fucking Dean Stockwell. What are you doing? Yeah, Dean Stockwell, great actor, is unfortunately no longer with us, but was really, really wonderful in Quantum Leap. Okay, back in the room, Archer is finally coming to and talking to Travis. He's asking him how many. Travis says he saw at least 30 Suliban, but this place is so big there could be more. Archer asks if he has any idea who attacked their shuttle, but Travis says he didn't have time to get a good look. Archer peeks out of the door and says, and I quote, "The energy readings we got from the other side of that moon couldn't have come from the helix." This line confounded me and Steven completely. We rewound and rewatched it like 4 times and we still doesn't make sense. So I looked it up on Memory Alpha. The problem is it's Suliban background that we probably should remember, but don't. And the line was, the energy readings we got from the other side of that moon couldn't have come from the helix. And so a Suliban helix is that massive space station that's has all the cells attached to each other.
The one that they destroyed in the pilot?
The one that they blew up, they blew up part of. So helices were formed by combining hundreds of cell ships and cell ship like components around a central core, and was capable of housing at least 3,000 personnel. It is used by the Suliban Cabal, and I did not remember that either. So the Cabal.
Oh, I remembered the Cabal. That was from the very first episode.
Yeah, so that's what the helix was. So he's confused because he's confused as to why the Suliban are even there, because he did not understand how any of those energy readings could have come all the way from the helix. It doesn't make any sense.
I don't care about Suliban lore at all. Like, I don't care about the Suliban. I don't care about any of this.
Got some bad news for you.
So are they just, so they can just leave this, they haven't been captured, they're just in this room, they can leave this room freely?
They can walk around the building that they're in, yes.
That's just checking in.
Yep. So Archer boosts Travis up to look through those skylight windows, and Travis says he sees a wall about 5 meters high that seems to go all around the building. He says he sees something that might be a guard tower, but he can't be sure. He doesn't see any people out there.
This is the most useful thing that we've ever seen Travis do. Like, he's getting some lines. He's actually doing some useful stuff already. This is so exciting.
You guys, this is a Travis episode. Like, it's not fully a Travis episode, but it's more than we've ever seen of Travis. So they decide to take another walk outside. And as they come around a corner, they run into a small Suliban woman. She seems like an older lady. They stop and she says, "You're the new arrivals." Archer says, "Why are we here?" And the woman answers, "Why are any of us here?"
Is this just behind the scenes footage of an extra on Star Trek Enterprise who is like, what's going on in this episode? I don't know.
So as they're standing there looking at her confused, an alarm sounds and a red light starts flashing on the ceiling. The woman puts her bucket down and stands up straight. And as they look down the hallway, more doors start to open and more Suliban come out and stand out in front of the doors, sort of at attention. 4 humanoid non-Suliban in uniforms and with weapons walk into that big common area, looking around and inspecting everyone. One Suliban who's standing with a cup by the water dispenser. As one of the guards is looking at him, he drops the cup and the noise attracts the head guard. The Suliban bends down to pick up the cup and the guard shocks his hand with a shock stick and he cries out in pain. And the guard just gives him a dirty look and walks past. This primary guard walks into the hallway where Travis and Archer are looking at each other and he tells them to follow him. He takes them into an office where there's another non-Suliban humanoid standing with his back to them behind a desk looking out a window. It's Dean Stockwell.
Yeah. Is he a human or is he a bumpy guy?
So he's an alien. He's a non-Suliban alien. But these aliens are almost exactly human. The only thing is they have a U-shaped ridge at the top of their noses between their eyebrows. Some have slightly exaggerated forehead, but Dean Stockwell literally just has the U-ridge stuck between his eyebrows. It made me think he refused to do serious makeup for this. He was like, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to put any head bumpy shit on.
All right. So they're not Cardassian.
Not Cardassian. No. It's literally just a human face, and they just have a tiny ridge on their forehead. Okay. That's all.
Okay.
Dean Stockwell asked them to sit, but Archer and Travis stay standing. They look suspicious. He apologizes to them for taking so long to see them. He says they don't get many starship captains there. He then picks up a small silver box about the size of his hand and pokes buttons on it.
Yes! That was literally the joke I was about to make. Is he frantically touching a little iPod thing?
So, for Jamie and our listeners who may not have watched Quantum Leap because it's quite an old show, Dean Stockwell played a hologram named Al who couldn't interact with anything and only Sam Beckett could see. But he would help him by getting information so he could get historical records and stuff. He
was the exposition character.
So he had this handheld device. It was actually like a brightly colored thing, but he would poke at it and it would tell him things. And it was just an ongoing thing. He would hit it, he'd get mad at it and hit it and stuff. So it's very much a play on that, except it's a simple silver box. So it was just a cute little reference to Quantum Leap, I think. So he picks up the box, he pokes at it, he says Jonathan Archer, and then he pokes at it again, he says Travis Mayweather. Travis asks him who he is, and he introduces himself as Colonel Grat. Grat says he examined the database on their shuttlecraft, so he knows they're from Earth and serve on a vessel called Enterprise. He asks them why they were in their military zone. And Archer and Travis just look at each other confused. Grat says they entered the orbit of their secondary moon and must have detected it. And Archer said they picked up some unusual energy readings but had no idea where they were coming from. They were just curious. Grat says they're lucky they didn't get their shuttlecraft vaporized. And Archer kind of grins and suggests they put up a no trespassing sign. Grat is not amused.
This does seem like something that would happen out in the universe, where you have a species that's we have this zone and we've set up these sensor things, and people that know them know when they hit it that's a warning or something.
Exactly.
But if you're not part of that species or the species that have interacted with them, you would have no idea. Except maybe the Vulcans would know. But clearly they haven't shared that information.
So Grat's not amused by Archer's little joke. He tells them that they're in a detention complex several light years from where they were found. Travis wants to know if anyone who violates his space gets thrown into a place like this. And Grat, still unamused, says that they're at war with a species that can mimic any humanoid and that they had to be certain that they were not infiltrators. Travis assures them that they're not Suliban, and Grat says he knows they've already tested their DNA. But he asks if they're familiar with the Cabal, at which point Archer sits down and he says, yeah, we've had a few run-ins with them, but that they've been lucky and haven't had too many casualties so far. He says they're eager to get back to Enterprise, and he asks to be taken back to the shuttle pod and they'll be on their way. But of course, it's not that easy. Grat says he doesn't have the authority to release them, and they have to appear before a magistrate on Tandar Prime. But he assures them that the process will be brief, that Grat will explain the whole situation to the magistrate. However, the transport to take them to Tandar Prime won't be there for 3 days. And in the meantime, they have to stay in the detention complex. He can't put them in better accommodations because it's very overcrowded. He suggests that they keep to themselves, and if the Suliban give him any trouble, to talk to the guards.
It is just the two of them there, right?
Just Archer and Travis, yeah. Grat also refuses to let them contact Enterprise directly. He says he's not allowed to do that, but he does assure them that he will call them and let them know personally what's going on. And he's super nice about. Like, he seems to be very nice about it. He tells the guard to escort them back to their quarters, make sure they get a good meal, and he apologizes again. And that's, by the way, why Travis could just get up and go. 'Cause it's a detention
it's
complex,
like, yeah,
right?
mhm.
Yeah.
Minimum security.
Yeah. So back in the room, Travis has a bowl of, I guess, maybe oatmeal, but it just looks really bad. It actually looks a bit like Rice Krispie treats that haven't fully hardened. Like, it's sticky and
Interesting.
it just looks like white stuff, but it's clearly got like bits in it.
Right.
He complains about it. Archer suggests that he get some sleep and that Archer will take first watch. He goes to drink some water, but the little pot that they have of water is empty. So Archer gets up to go get some water. As an aside, I was a little confused at the way Travis and Archer interacted with each other. In the scene with Grat, Travis spoke a lot, which as an ensign, you'd think he would just let the captain take the lead, but he had lots of questions, lots of things to say. And again, like, Archer went to get him water. It was just weird, but it was really just an excuse to get Archer out into the common area.
Right.
And as he walks in, every Suliban that he passes kind of looks at him very suspiciously.
Considering he started a war with their species.
I don't think they have figured that out yet.
Isn't that guy who committed all those war crimes? No, he wouldn't be here. It must be some guy who looks like
crazy.
him.
So he's going to fill his pot. He looks around and he sees one of the Suliban he'd seen earlier hanging clothes on a clothesline with a Suliban child helping him. And Archer gets his water and he starts to leave, but he can't help it. He walks back and he tells the guy he can't believe that he would do this to a child, that she was too young to be in the Cabal. And the Suliban tells Archer he doesn't know what he's talking about. Archer says he does know that they're given genetic tricks as payment in the Caliban. The Cabal. Caliban. Sorry. Random Shakespeare reference.
Thank you.
The guy looks shocked when he talks about genetic tricks as payment.
Why does Archer think that the guards would know anything? Like, these are just guards.
No. Sorry. This is not a guard. This is a Suliban.
Oh.
There's a Suliban guy and his kid hanging clothes on a clothesline.
Going about their business.
Doing their
Why
thing.
is Archer complaining? I thought he was talking to a guard being like, how dare you guys do this?
No, he's talking to the Suliban because he is assuming that everybody here is a member of the Cabal. They're all Suliban. And so he's like, this is a kid. What are you doing bringing this kid into your politics?
Well, if these kids are in prison, they must have done something.
Okay. Sorry. Archer...
Jesus
I'm
Christ.
clearly not doing a very good enterprise planning today.
No, Archer sees like a woman and her child.
A man and his child, yes.
Okay, sorry, a man and his child. And instead of being like, they don't look like they would be part of this Cabal, which means that the other guy's probably lying about that. Instead, he goes, Suliban, how dare you have a child be part of your secret evil Cabal?
Exactly.
That's
Correct.
where his mind
You're
jumps.
trying to smuggle your
correct.
child across the border. It must have drugs in its butt.
Just you wait, you guys. Just
God.
you wait. So
Lord.
he goes off on this guy, and the guy tells him he doesn't know what he's talking about. And then he basically says, I don't know who you are, but you're wrong about us. He says that they're not genetically enhanced or members of the Cabal. And he starts to walk away with the kid. And then Archer calls back after him saying, if that's true, what are you doing here?
Jesus
you must
Christ,
be guilty if
Archer.
you're in prison,
Ow.
basically.
Oh my
Archer.
God.
And the guy stops and turns around and sort of sarcastically says to him, well, didn't Colonel Grat tell you we're dangerous? All Suliban are dangerous. And he starts to walk away again, but the guard walks in and stops him, telling him it's past curfew. Mm-hmm. The Suliban says that they were just on their way back, and the guard says, sorry, Danik, it's the second time this week. And the Suliban, whose name is Danik, says, Clev, please. So they seem to be familiar with each other. They know each other by name, the guard and the Suliban. So Guard Clev says it's only for one night. Archer jumps in and says it was his fault for delaying him. Clev tells him to go back to his cell. He tells Archer that Danik is going into isolation and Archer should do what he says unless he wants to join him. And Danik is kind of resigned to his fate. He asks one of the other guards to make sure his kid gets back to their quarters, and he goes off with Clev. Archer is perplexed, which is sort of his standard mode of operation here.
Oh, wow. This is getting into some moral ambiguity here with Archer, which is weird. Okay.
Moral ambiguity that Archer doesn't seem to see at all.
Yeah.
He just seems confused.
Yeah, he's just always perplexed, you know? He's either jumping to conclusions or perplexed. Those are his two modes.
Jumping to some strange conclusion. Like, he sees, like, old women and children locked up, and he just jumps to, well, clearly they must have done something evil.
Yep.
Like, now that he's all buddy-buddy with the guy who's running the prison.
Exactly. His pal is running the prison. So, back on the Enterprise, Grat is talking to T'Pol. She says she wants to talk to Travis and Archer, but Grat is giving her the same line about regulations not allowing it, but that they're in comfortable quarters and perfectly safe. Trip says he'd like to hear that directly from them, but of course Grat refuses. T'Pol asks a few more questions, and Grat tells them that they can attend the hearing. It's going to be on Tandar Prime, and they can use any legal counsel they choose. He, again, seems very helpful. He says, look, this is just a misunderstanding. I understand it. You just have to go through this process and everything will be fine.
Is T'Pol in the captain's chair?
Yeah. T'Pol is not only in the captain's chair, she is clearly the acting captain. Trip is listening to her, more or
So
less.
maybe we've, like, figured out chain of command now.
Is she doing her pose?
Sort of, yeah.
I was just going to ask that.
I think she might be standing, but she's, yeah. So Grat sends them the coordinates to Tandar Prime, and he tells them to head that way, and T'Pol thanks him. And as soon as he closes comms, Trip checks to see if Hoshi was able to trace the signal. So wherever Archer is,
they don't know where
they don't know where it is, and it is not Tandar Prime.
Let me see if I can recap what I understand has happened so far. Archer and Travis were in a shuttle pod. They apparently crossed some border that they didn't know about. They were captured. They're put in this detention center, and now they have to be processed by this alien race to make sure that they are not shape-shifting or quote-unquote Suliban. It's like they're going through immigration. Like, they illegally crossed some border that they didn't know about, and now the Enterprise is trying to catch up to them to make sure that they're okay.
Yeah, they're putting them in this detention center in a holding cell until they can go in front of a magistrate, explain the situation, and be released. And the main thing is that the magistrate is on Tandar Prime, which is far away from where they're being held. So Grat is saying, Enterprise, you just go to Tandar Prime. We'll meet you there. Then you can be part of the trial and everything, or whatever it is.
Wait, between me and Bill, who do we think from Enterprise is going to be the, like, defense attorney? Is it going to be T'Pol or is it going to be Trip? If they're smart, it will be T'Pol. But I kind of think they might do Trip.
Please tell me that this ends with Trip showing up in a white seersucker suit with a big Panama hat. And he's got his suspenders and he's finished. Your Honor, my clients, clearly.
Well...
Or maybe they'll buddy team it and they'll be like doing it together and like go back and forth. Oh, okay. I can't wait for this.
This is actually
I love a good
an interesting concept for this show, that they're just fucking flinging themselves out into space and other races. Because again, this is kind of the half interesting idea of Enterprise, is that other races are far more powerful than we are, and we don't know what's out there.
Right.
Okay. All right. I like this.
Okay. So Trip checks to see if Hoshi was able to trace the signal, and she was not, but Trip tells her to keep trying. And T'Pol asks Trip if he is suggesting a rescue, and of course he is. T'Pol thinks they shouldn't provoke the Tandarans any further. She says they should just wait for the trial. But Trip is worried they'll be found guilty for some reason.
They had 5,000 grams of tenobulum blow up their anuses when they were...
I mean, We have no idea who these aliens are or what their trials are like or what their laws are like.
Yeah, it could be a real Wesley Crusher situation, you know?
Fell over and crushed a plant. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up, that like, we just have no idea if there's something like that where they're like, sorry, they crossed the military line.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter. They didn't know. Or it could be like the Cardassians where they're like, no, everyone is just guilty and this is just for show. Like we truly just don't know.
But to be fair, Grat is telling them, this is not a problem. They'll be released. From T'Pol's perspective at this point, there's no reason to not believe that this was just a misunderstanding.
Yeah, that's fair.
They're going to follow the rules and get him out. And yes, it's a little bit of an inconvenience, but we'd rather do that than,
Yeah.
No, and just in terms of Starfleet, if Picard was facing this situation, he would be very diplomatic. He would be in the T'Pol situation where he's like, okay, we didn't know that we were in your territory. We apologize, and if you tell us that you're not going to fucking kill our crew members, okay, we'll go through this process. Yeah.
All right. Anyway, Trip's worried they'll be found guilty. T'Pol says that it's unlikely, and that if they want to explore alien cultures, they need to respect their laws. Trip does not seem convinced. T'Pol offers to contact Vulcan High Command so they can send an arbitrator. Trip goes, a Vulcan lawyer? He'd be better off getting the electric chair.
Which means, I guess, that he's going to be the one to try to do their defense.
Well, T'Pol wants to know what the electric chair is. Trip's like, never mind. And also, there is some rando flying the ship now because Travis is down in the detention center. It's a guy we don't know. He's never named. We don't have any idea. But T'Pol tells him, the guy who is not Travis, to set a course for Tandar Prime.
Does he just nod instead of saying, yes, sir, because he's an extra and they don't want to pay him?
Yes. He does not say a word.
I'm not going to speak because you would have to pay me extra if I had a line in this episode.
I love when extras like smile and nod and don't say, and it looks so awkward. But yeah, Star Trek is like, we are not paying them. We are not
Poor guy.
paying them.
If he had gotten a line, he could have lived on the con circuit for like the next 30 years.
Exactly. All right. Back down in the complex, Archer and Travis are very perplexed. They're watching this little girl again. She's painting on the wall. It's like she's making a little mural. It's cute. And they're looking perplexed. And they walk over to Danik, who's the father, and he is, again, playing a game at a table nearby with two other Suliban. And as they walk up, the two other Suliban see them and walk away. It's real high school lunchroom vibe happening there. And Archer apologizes for getting Danik in trouble. He says he hopes it wasn't too bad. Danik says it gets very cold there at night, and sometimes he wishes he was genetically enhanced, but that they did not need to apologize. It was just a misunderstanding. I love Danik. Danik is snarky as hell. He's very, smart and on top of things and sizes up Archer pretty immediately. It's kind of great. Archer sits down to see if Danik will tell them what is going on, and Danik is super suspicious immediately. He says they should go talk to the Tandarans. Archer says he spoke to Grat, but got the feeling he wasn't getting the full story. And he introduces himself, and there's this very funny scene where he puts his hand out so the guy will shake it, and Danik looks at him like he's insane, like, why are you doing this? But he also puts his hand out, and then Archer shakes it, and he looks really confused, but he sort of is like, okay. Like, it's a very cute little moment of acting where it's like, yeah, if you didn't know what a handshake was, you would be very confused by this.
Yeah, it would be weird to offer a handshake to an alien that you just met.
And yet, although I feel like that's a pretty common thing. Like,
well, you're showing an open hand. I guess that's the. I don't have any
an
weapons
open
here.
hand.
But
yeah.
keep in mind that in the genetically modified Suliban culture, the hot chick had to kiss Archer to make sure that he was telling the truth. How great would it be if this guy goes in for like an open mouth kiss with Archer?
I forgot about that.
Yeah, I forgot about
that.
Yeah, that's the way that they like steal deals or whatever.
Stupid thing.
Is we put our tongues in each other's mouth in order to sense if you're telling the truth.
So gross and not no good. Not practical in any way. Not hygienic in any way. Okay. Danik invites them to his quarters for lunch.
Yeah, he does.
And his daughter has made some sort of stew. It looks delicious. Travis tells her it's very good. The conversation is Travis is like, this is delicious. And she's like, you look like a Tandaran. She is also trucking no bullshit from them. She's very suspicious. Because they do. The humans and the Tandarans look almost exactly the same. Her dad tells her to go play with her friends, so she leaves. And then Danik explains that the Suliban who are in this detention center are not criminals or soldiers. The only thing they're guilty of is being Suliban. They aren't members of the Cabal, but all that seems to matter is the way they look. And Archer realizes that the place is an internment camp.
He's figuring that out now?
Just now, he has figured out it's an internment camp.
Archer's so dim. Sorry, the second from the beginning, when the first person he saw was an older woman, and then as soon as it became clear this was some sort of prison, immediately it was like that. This is what's going on. This is some sort of like weird internment camp. And then we saw the guy with the daughter.
Yeah. So Danik confirms it's an internment camp. The Cabal started their attacks 8 years ago, and soon the Tandarans started to question the loyalty of all Suliban living in their territory. They rounded them up and put them into these detention camps, saying it was for their own safety. He says there are 89 Suliban in this camp and thousands more in other camps, all of whom were citizens of worlds in the Tandaran sector. Danik was actually born in Tandaran space, like on a Tandaran planet, in the same town as that guard, Clev. He was friends with Clev's brother growing up. Travis asks about the Suliban government, like why haven't they helped? But Danik explains that the Suliban homeworld became uninhabitable 300 years ago, so there really isn't a government. Most of the Suliban became nomadic, but some chose to assimilate into other cultures, and his grandfather was unlucky enough to have decided to settle on Tandar Prime.
Okay, that's kind of an interesting and weird, messy idea for Star Trek, because almost everything I remember from Star Trek is that every species is their own, like, we're in the Orion sector. This is a messy idea for Trek to grapple with.
Yeah, and it makes sense to me that there would be some species who don't have a central species government because they don't have a homeworld for it anymore. But then as they go out, they're just like, presumably they're part of the governments on the various planets.
Even when we deal with imperialism in Star Trek, like the Klingon Empire, they don't really deal with the colonized species. It's just the Klingons. Okay,
but in this case, it sounded like they weren't colonized. They're just immigrants.
No, they're
basically
immigrants. Well, sort of. They've lived there their whole lives, or they were born there, but their ancestors or grandparents or whatever came and moved into that and then settled in these Tandarans.
And it sounds like it settled fairly recently in terms of generations.
Just the idea that there is not a hegemony outside of the neoliberal federation where everybody is welcome and everybody's rights are respected. Okay, this is an interesting idea.
So as they're talking, there's a knock on the door and another Suliban comes in. He is very concerned that the humans are there. I don't know what his name is, and we only hear it once way at the end, so I dubbed him early on Sus Suliban because he is very suspicious. So Sus Suliban has brought a letter for Danik, who goes away to read it, and then he asks Archer and Travis what species they are, and they say they're humans. And Sus Suliban says, never heard of them, which I think they may be trying to make a running joke, because I swear that interaction has happened multiple times where they're like, we're human, and they're like, never heard of them. Danik, after reading the letter, is upset. The letter is from his wife, who was relocated separately in another camp. She had requested a transfer and was denied again. And just as Archer is trying to be sympathetic, The alarm klaxons go off again. It's midday inspection. Archer thanks him for lunch, and the humans leave. And Suliban asks Danik why he was talking to them. He's worried that they're working with Grat. So the guard, Clev, is walking around doing his inspection. And he walks past Danik's little girl, and she's kind of out of line. He pushes her over with his shock stick. He doesn't use the shock stick. He just kind of pushes her.
And Clev, the guard, is the one that grew up with Danik?
Yeah. Clev is the guard who has lines, basically. Yeah. So Archer protests at him pushing the girl around. Clev says that Colonel Grat wants to see them. And both he and Travis make to leave, but Grat stops Travis and says that he just wants to see Archer. And so we get a solo scene with Scott Bakula and Dean Stockwell, y'all! Grat is giving Archer shit for being nosy and not taking his advice to not talk to anybody. And Archer is in full wise-ass mode. He's like, I know it's a big problem. I'm just so curious to meet all these new people. He just can't resist it.
Like doing his signature, I have more information, but I'm pretending like I don't know it.
Exactly. It's 100% Archer.
Graf says, you don't understand. Your brain is in Swiss cheese mode.
So Grat says that this behavior could get Archer into trouble. He tells him to keep to himself. And Archer says he'll do his best, and he gets ready to leave. But Grat has a question for him. Have you ever been to, he looks at his little silver box again.
Yes.
Oklahoma? And Archer looks concerned. And because you guys don't know what I'm talking about, but what Oklahoma means is Broken Bow, the very first episode.
Okay.
Broken Bow, Oklahoma. So Grat says he was also a little curious, and he did a little bit more digging through the Tandaran Intelligence Agency after he realized that Archer was familiar with the Cabal. And now, somehow, he knows a lot. So he knows about Broken Bow, he knows about Clang. He wants to know what the Suliban wanted in Oklahoma, and I want to know what the Suliban wanted in Oklahoma.
We all want to know what the Suliban is. That would be Archer's reaction. We all want to know what the Suliban wanted in Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the pilot. I don't remember what the deal was with Oklahoma.
They were chasing the Klingon.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
they wanted Clang. So the thing they wanted in Oklahoma was Clang.
Clang had gotten information from the hot chick Suliban, and he was trying to take it back to the Klingon homeworld, and he was escaping from Rigel, and he accidentally crash landed in Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and the Suliban were trying to kill him so that he couldn't take this information, which was coded into his blood from the Suliban hot chick to make sure
remember any of
that
this.
I am so impressed
so that
you remember
the Klingons wouldn't learn that the Suliban, who were part of the Cabal, were doing false flag operations to start a Klingon civil war to undermine the Klingons as part of the temporal Cold War. How do you not remember this?
How do you remember this? I mean, now that you say that, I remember it. I would never in a million years have remembered all of that.
I don't remember any of like the false flag stuff.
Yeah, no, that was the whole point for the
Cold War.
I remember the Cold. I remember the temporal Cold War.
I just don't remember what anything had to do with it.
I'm not angry. I'm ashamed that I remember this.
As you should be.
Back to me.
I remembered so many details.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Pilot names.
Okay.
I feel like saying
impressed.
temporal Cold War. It was like the Winter Soldier code words. Like this activated into me, and now I have to repeat to you what the premise of the first 2 episodes of the Enterprise was. That has had absolutely no impact on this entire series to this point. Yeah. I cannot believe I remember what the whole fucking temporal Cold War was.
I'm really sorry you still remember all of this. It's not good. We may have to have an intervention.
My fucking brain, man. Do I remember anything useful? No.
No. Yeah. Okay, so Archer tries to be like, that's out of my pay grade. You got to talk to my superiors. I don't know anything about what was going on in Oklahoma. Grat cuts him off. He says he's sure he knows more than he's saying because he knows that Enterprise took the Klingon back to Kronos.
Sorry, I love Grat got Archer at his own game.
He did.
Like, Grat
He's
had
like,
more information that he pretended not to have.
Oh, he has so much information. He knows that they made a detour to Rigel 10 where they met Saren.
Is that the pretty lady with the tongue lie detector?
Yep.
Is Dean Stockwell bringing up Memory Alpha on his iPad?
That's on his little silver box thing. Ziggy!
The show is not cool enough to do this, but it's almost like Dean Stockwell is like, hold on a second. There are a lot of plot holes in this show thus far.
So they know about the hot chick. They know Archer was there. They know that Archer got shot in the leg.
Oh my God. Does Dean Stockwell start playing our podcast from...
That's what the temporal Cold War actually was. So Archer just refuses to answer. He asks him what he wants. Grat says he wants information, what they know about the Cabal, what genetic enhancements they've seen, helix deployments, who's giving the orders. Archer asks him why he doesn't just ask the Suliban who are in the camp. And Grat says, well, they would not be very helpful. And Archer says, well, if that's true, why are they in prison? Grat tries to deflect, but Archer keeps yelling at him about there being children and families being separated. Grat finally yells that it's for their own protection and they had no choice. When the Cabal first attacked, many Tandarans were scared and there were instances of violence against the Suliban, so they rounded them up to keep them safe.
Sounds like a bunch of bullshit to me.
Yep.
Yeah. He says they can't just let them leave because if they did, the Cabal would catch up with them and then turn them into soldiers as soon as they left Tandaran space.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. He says they're safer in the camps, and then he goes back to trying to get Archer to talk about what he knows.
This is a fucking wild direction for this show to take.
Yeah, the whole, like, the children are still guilty because they're going to be future Cabal members.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Y'all, as I said, he knows a lot. Now he asks about Silic, who is the Suliban who came on board with the Pilgrims.
Ah.
It's interesting to think that this episode came out. It was clearly written and probably filmed pre 9/11.
No, this might have been post 9/11.
Because the show started in 2001, so...
Is this the 9/11 episode? Because remember, we heard there was going to be a 9/11 episode from Charles.
April of 2002, so it's hard to tell when it was written, right?
Well, this definitely has an enemy within feel.
It really does. Okay, so where was I? So he asks about Silic, the Suliban who came on board with the Pilgrims, and Grat asks Archer what Silic wanted and if he said anything about the temporal Cold War. So they know about as much as what the humans know at this point.
Interesting.
Archer just stonewalls him. Grat pushes his call a goon button on his desk and the guard Clev shows up. And Grat threatens Archer. He says if he doesn't get some answers, they may not make the shuttle that they're supposed to take the next morning, and the next shuttle won't arrive for another 60 days. And Archer just looks angry as he is taken away. Grat then checks in with the Enterprise and tells them that the hearing has been postponed. He makes some excuse, but says that it hopefully won't be more than a few days. So at this point, it's clear Grat is playing both sides and can't be trusted.
Yeah, this is definitely a post 9/11 episode.
Grat explains they're doing everything that they can. He asks them to be patient, and he cuts the comm. After he cuts the comm between Malcolm and Hoshi, who were clearly working on it as he was talking, they manage to trace the signal, and Hoshi says it's about 5.2 light years away. Trip looks ready for an argument. He tells T'Pol, I just want to go take a look and make sure they're okay. T'Pol absolutely agrees. She's like, yep, let's do it.
It's interesting, like, T'Pol is acting captain, but it does feel like they're, like, sharing it. Like
yeah, so it is clear that Trip is asking T'Pol. It's very obvious that he's like, this is my opinion, but, like, it's clear he would fight if she said no, but he's still asking her. He's not giving the orders. So she just agrees. And so what it feels more like is like he still doesn't 100% trust her, but she is really, as always, doing the right thing on top of things. Clearly sees this doesn't seem right now. Like, she gets it.
Trip had like a demotion when she joined the ship, basically. Like, Trip was supposed to be in charge in these situations.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah, if T'Pol hadn't joined, like, Trip would definitely be in charge.
Chain of command makes absolutely no sense. Here's my headcanon, is that whoever Trip Tucker was, he literally got into a transporter accident with a golden Labrador retriever. And because his reaction is, go, bite thing, go, fight thing. And T'Pol goes, no, sit, stay. And then she puts a little treat on his nose and walks away. And he has to sit there. So we have established that T'Pol is actually the second in command.
It appears to be that's the case, yes.
Yeah.
So they decide they're going to head over and check things out. Now they know where they are. Back in the prison, Archer is telling Danik about their experiences so far. He says, most of the people we meet have been pretty eager to get to know us. But we have had our share of unfortunate encounters. I guess you could say this is one of them. Danik says he's lived with the Tendarans all his life, and they're mostly decent people. He used to be a director of research at an engineering institute. He says the province that he lived in was beautiful and that Archer should go visit it when he gets out. He encourages Archer to just tell Grat what they know and get themselves out of there. But Archer says he doesn't like being strong-armed, and he doesn't like what's happening to Danik and the others.
I understand why he's upset about the internment situation, but the first step, I would think, would still be like, you get out of there, and then once you get back to the Enterprise, then you'll have the Enterprise do something about it. Like, what are you going to do from inside the internment camp?
I would also feel like Picard would be like, you need to talk to Starfleet. I'm not giving you any information. Like, your government needs to negotiate with Starfleet.
Yeah. Well, he did try to say that, but...
Yeah, it is strange, because he could just, like, contact Starfleet. Let's get an admiral on this call.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually kind of strange that he doesn't.
Okay, so Archer asks Danik if anybody's tried to escape before, and Danik says that a couple of years back, 3 men pried open one of the security gates and tried to get to the docking bay, which is only about 100 meters away, and it's where they keep all the impounded Suliban ships.
Right.
It's very convenient.
That's also the crazy thing about escaping is you're in space.
Right. It's a little bit of a problem. But Danik said that the 3 men managed to get into the docking bay, but they were all killed before they could reach a vessel. Grat claimed that they'd been armed, which is ridiculous because they came from the internment camp. Archer says that they might have succeeded with a little outside help. He says the Enterprise is almost certainly going to come looking for him and Travis. Danik says he appreciates the offer, but he doesn't think that many people would be willing to take the risk. And Archer says, have you asked them? And he starts to ask like planning type questions, like how many ships are in the docking bay and things like that. Meanwhile, Travis is in the common room. He's getting some water and he sees suspicious Suliban sitting at a table writing. He walks up to try to be friendly. He asks if he's writing a letter. And suspicious Suliban says, no, it's a journal. Travis says that could be valuable someday. The people will want to know what happened there.
Oh, come on. Like, he cares. Like,
but suspicious Suliban says that he doubts anyone will ever read it. Suspicious Suliban is with you, Jamie, 100%.
The idea that you'd walk up to Anne Frank and be like, oh, writing in your diary, you know, that's going to be valuable someday. Like, she would give a fuck.
Shit. And that's actually what happens. Travis asks why he's writing it if he doesn't think anyone's going to read it. And suspicious Suliban asks him why he cares. He says he sees how Travis looks at the Suliban and that it's clear that he's terrified of them. He says, quote, you wouldn't be surprised if I slithered up this wall and turned my face inside out. Cabal, Suliban, it's all the same to you. Travis says that isn't true, but Suliban just walks away and Travis looks disconcerted.
Do you guys remember Ancient Onion article, The Ghost of Anne Frank. Oh my God, all you guys stop reading my diary.
So back in their quarters, Travis is asleep and Archer is studying a hand-drawn map of the complex when suddenly a communicator beams onto the floor next to him. He grins and he picks it up, and it's T'Pol. She asks if they're all right. She's worried because they've picked up so many Suliban life signs around. And Archer says it isn't what they think. T'Pol says they're in orbit, but will be detected soon. Trip is ready to transport them out, but Archer tells him to hold off. He says the Suliban here are being held unfairly, and he wants to help them. T'Pol is concerned about this idea. He asks her if she's ever heard of Manzanar, an internment camp on Earth during World War II where Japanese American citizens were imprisoned even though they didn't do anything wrong. He says the same thing is happening here. T'Pol says that she thought that he'd decided not to interfere with other cultures.
No, I'm sorry. Time out, stop. At what point did Archer ever say or indicate that?
When he committed genocide that one time.
We just had the hunting episode where he is like, absolutely not. Yeah. We're going to go in and we're just mess with everything and then we're just going to leave.
Yeah. Archer says he's making an exception. And T'Pol does let it go.
Sorry, I'm still on Archer. T'Pol being like, I thought you didn't want to interfere
with other cultures.
Never happened.
Constantly interfering.
Never happened.
Yep.
Even their one time, again, that they supposedly didn't interfere, it will lead to genocide.
Right. Exactly.
They're non-interference.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Archer and Travis are with Danik and the suspicious Suliban. They are looking at the maps and they're making plans. The suspicious Suliban says they'll get shot before they get 10 meters outside the complex, and that even if they manage to lift off, there are patrol vessels around the planet which will take them out. Archer says Enterprise can handle the patrol vessels. And then suspicious Suliban asks where are they supposed to go even if they do make the escape. Danik says that all they have to do is get out of Tendaran territory.
Why can't the Enterprise transport everyone?
Never asked, never answered. But I do think that they are not 100% comfortable with the transporter.
Yeah, I mean, the crew of the Enterprise is 83 people. Maybe they can...
Yeah, that's true. And bringing 89 more people onto that ship is a whole nother thing.
Reasons.
Yeah. They're stealing like shuttles or something?
Yeah.
Well, all of the Suliban's shuttles are in a hangar like 100 meters away from where they are. So
but they're going to somehow do this and not have to ever bring all these Suliban onto the Enterprise.
I think the plan is to get everybody onto a ship and then out of Tendaran territory. And then Danik says there's some colonies outside the territory that he knows some people at that they could help them. So they could just head for that. Suspicious Suliban thinks this is way too dangerous, but Travis asks if he'd rather spend the rest of his life in prison. Suspicious Suliban is suspicious. He tells Danik that they've only known the humans for a few days, that they could be plants from Grat, encouraging them to try to escape so that Grat has an excuse to kill them all.
Yep.
And that he should think about his daughter. At one point when they're talking, Danik calls him Sajin. That's the first time we actually hear what his name is, so I'm just going to keep calling him Suspicious Suliban.
Is he related to Suspicious Son from Terra Nova?
That's Forgotten Son. Or
no, it was Suspicious Son.
It was Suspicious Son.
Oh, Suspicious Son. It was Suspicious Son. Yeah, okay, fair enough. It's fair. There's a lot of suspicious people.
I'm not criticizing your analysis of this. It just caught my imagination.
All right. Anyway, Suspicious Suliban says he's not going to help plan their suicide. He leaves. And Archer says he hopes the others are more enthusiastic. Danik sort of shrugs and is like, let's just go back to it. It's the next day, and Archer is back in Grat's office. Grat says he's willing to compromise. He just wants to know about Silik, who is the Suliban who snuck onto the Enterprise and tried to fuck some shit up.
Right.
Archer plays his normal, like, I'm captured and being a smartass game and tells them, like, he was this tall and he was kind of scrawny and, you know, more
he
useless
served
information.
me scrambled eggs. Oh, no, wait, that was the other guy.
That was
Shit,
the
I
other
fucked
guy.
up.
Archer's like, what are you gonna do about it? You gonna beat me up?
You gonna beat me
You
up?
gonna beat me up?
Funny you should say that, Jamie. Grat gets mad and says that they detected unusual energy readings the previous night that were coming from Archer's quarters. He pushes his dial a grunt button and the door opens and Clev shows up with Travis, whose face is all beat up. Y'all, it was Travis who
my
got
God.
beat up this time.
Oh, so unfair.
Poor Travis. And Grat pulls the communicator out of his pocket.
Archer's so disappointed.
He's so mad, man. He's so mad. He's like, why would you not just pretend to be a slug and kick the shit out of me?
Poor Travis, like, this was Travis's episode, and still, like, Archer's doing everything.
Yeah, exactly. So Grat said they found the communicator in Mayweather's pocket, but Travis wouldn't tell them where it came from. Archer looks like he's gonna go for Grat. Like he's like getting ready to punch Grat, but the Clev guy shock sticks him in the back. And Grat orders him to isolation. Back on the Enterprise, T'Pol and Trip are making their plan for getting into the complex and taking out the weaponry. T'Pol calms Phlox and asks what his status is. And then we get patient vision of Phlox shining a light into someone's face. We don't see who it is.
They're gonna make someone look like a Suliban. Maybe
So-
Trip, I guess, because it's not Phlox and it's not T'Pol.
Trip's
Or
gonna be
so it's Hoshi or Trip.
No, it's going to be a Trip with a spoon head.
So Hoshi gets an incoming
Oh, I guess
communication.
it's not Hoshi, so it's definitely Trip.
And they think that it's Archer, but of course it's Grat. He asks them why they're off course from Tandar Prime. He says if they come any closer to the planet, the patrol ships will open fire. Back down to the planet in the common area, Travis is tending to his wounds. He's really badly beaten up. His face is bloody. His eye is swollen. He's at the sink dabbing a cloth on his face when suspicious Suliban walks up and asks what happened. And Travis asks why he cares. Suspicious Suliban says that Danik is looking for Archer, and Travis tells him that Archer's in isolation, and asks if he still thinks that they're working for the Tendarans. Which, by the way, beating up the one guy would be a really good way,
Yeah,
an
I was
obvious
just gonna
way
say.
to make you think that we are not working with the Tendarans when you actually are, but whatever. This is not that complex a show. Travis says fairly that they could have left a while ago, but they decided to stay and help them. Suspicious Suliban says they never asked for their help. And Travis asks why. Is it because they're not Suliban? See how he turned that around on him?
Right.
Travis says that Suspicious Suliban is suspicious because they aren't Suliban and they look too much like the Tendarans. He says that he admits that when he first arrived, he had preconceptions about the Suliban, but he changed his mind.
Sorry, this is ridiculous. Suspicious Suliban has a real reason to be suspicious. It is not some sort of weird racism against people who look like humans. These random aliens showed up and they keep being called into private things with the guy running the internment camp. Like, it does seem really suspicious.
Yep, you are absolutely correct. But they are attempting to make this a both sides are wrong situation.
I think this is a very messy episode. Nobody can trust anybody because the Enterprise crew has thus far only encountered the cabal of the Suliban. They don't know this other race at all. And these Suliban who are in this internment camp don't know the Enterprise crew at all. And then the Tendarans only know the Enterprise crew from reading the Memory Alpha recaps of the episodes. Like, these guys are fucking crazy. We cannot
guys are
trust them at all. So this is
insane.
like, I appreciate the messiness of...
Yeah, the fact that the humans look like the Tendarans does matter. And not in a racism way, but they could have just changed, like, given them, like, weird forehead stuff to make it smoother between the eyes and be like, oh, they're definitely a totally new race.
The Suliban who are in this internment camp see this other race getting preferential treatment.
Right.
Like, they have no reason. They don't know who these fucking humans are. They have no reason to trust them.
Yeah, I sorry.
And-
like, the both sidesism. I hate it.
And to be fair, they do share a common enemy in the Cabal. So it would be perfectly reasonable for Archer to share information with them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of gray area in this, I think.
I don't think it's both sides. I think it's a paranoia thing. Like, we don't know who, because
Right.
we've never met the Dean Stockwell race.
Right. But Travis is saying that the Suliban are judging him, that suspicious Suliban is judging him purely because of the way they look, and they are judging him based on the way that people that look like him have been treating him.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're not even judging them at all. They're just looking at the situation and they're seeing what's going on. Like, it is not judging based on how they look, or it is taking in all of the information they have and being like, these guys could be like actually working. Like, the suspicious guy is right. He should be suspicious.
And also keep in mind, everybody in this internment camp lived and worked with the Tendarans. They were betrayed by the Tendarans and put into this internment camp.
Right.
The people they lived with, the people who they were friends with. So of course they're going to be suspicious.
Yeah,
How could they not be suspicious?
This is a pretty heady episode for Star Trek Enterprise.
It is quite heady.
Yeah, but it feels...
But it's also very heavy-handed.
Yeah, and it feels like they don't know how to handle it. Okay, let's see what happens.
All right, so
Trip gets pregnant.
So the Enterprise is now headed for the prison planet, and Grat comes in on the main viewer. He tells them to check their sensors. There are 2 patrol ships heading towards them. T'Pol says they didn't come to fight, they came to talk.
Isn't there someone else they can talk to? Like, Grat is just the guy who runs this one internment camp, right?
That's where Archer and that's who they're dealing with. That's the bureaucrat
but
they have access to.
Shouldn't there be someone else?
Do you want her to ask for his manager?
Manager, thank you!
You would
I
think
want that.
Species would have somebody whose job it is to talk to other...
Yeah, I don't know.
Like some sort of diplomat or something.
But I think that they're in this lockdown mode of being attacked by terrorists. So maybe it is a military thing. I don't know. It's never really asked or answered. This scene is so fun that I wanted to read it to you guys word for word because it's the scene between T'Pol and Grat. And it's another moment where T'Pol is just fucking brilliant.
Here we go.
T'Pol, we didn't come here to fight. We came to talk with you. Grat, they'll have a weapons lock on your vessel in less than 1 minute. T'Pol, do you eat meat, Colonel? Grat, what? Our chef is preparing a meal in your honor, and I was curious whether you're vegetarian. I was hoping you would join me for dinner. It would give us an opportunity to get acquainted. She's all sexy. Like, she's not even, like, hiding it at this point.
Right.
Grat, you have 45 seconds to leave orbit. T'Pol, I can't believe that you're really going to destroy our vessel over a trivial incident like this. I can tell you're an enlightened man. All I'm asking for is a chance to show you that we're enlightened as well. We're transmitting a copy of Earth's historical database, along with the Starfleet Charter, and a record of all human contact with alien species.
No, don't do that!
If you have any... yeah, fair enough. If you have any doubts about our intentions, this material should lay them to rest. She turns to Hoshi. Send them the Vulcan database as well. I think you'll find that my people have a great deal in common with you too. Grat starts to go fuzzy on the view screen. You're jamming our frequencies. Break off your transmission. T'Pol, but what about dinner? Grat, as he's breaking up, end your transmission and leave orbit, and the transmission fails. She basically sent them everything they had to
She spammed them?
She spammed him, yes.
Okay.
She did a denial of service attack is what she did.
DDoS, yeah.
A DDoS, yes. So T'Pol immediately calms Tucker, who is in the transporter room, having just transported something. We don't know what. He says it's done. Hoshi says the patrol ships are closing fast. And
so they use that as like cover.
It was
like
cover.
sending all that other stuff as cover for whatever he was doing.
T'Pol tells random nav guy to get them out of there. Travis is eating his gruel Rice Krispie treats alone in their quarters when someone bangs on the door. He opens it and it's a Suliban. Travis asks who he is, and the Suliban closes the door and says, "Don't you recognize me, Travis? It's Malcolm."
I forgot Malcolm. Sorry,
You forgot Malcolm existed, didn't you?
Oh, it was Malcolm. It wasn't Trip. Okay.
It's
Malcolm existed.
It's Malcolm in full Suliban face.
Oh, God.
Oh, he's the Suliban. He's not.
He
okay.
is
Okay.
full Suliban. Malcolm says he used the transporter, that he's finally getting used to it. So they're still not 100% comfortable with the transporter.
No, they don't.
The big, overwhelming transmission that the Enterprise sent distracted the sensor, so his transport wasn't detected. You were right, Jamie. Malcolm pulls 2 phase pistols out. He gives one to Travis, and then they go to find Danik. They find Danik, and Malcolm says he'll find Archer, and Travis says the charges are in place. As they're talking, the klaxons go off again, and it's inspection time, but 15 minutes early. Malcolm comes to the Enterprise and says that the guards are off schedule and they're early. T'Pol says they're still like 200,000 kilometers away. Hoshi says the patrol ships are coming, and they raise shields, polarize the hull plating. The patrol ships start shooting. The Enterprise fires torpedoes at the patrol ships and score 2 direct hits, and the patrol ships veer off. They made a huge deal about these patrol ships and being worried about them, but they really seem to be ahead of them technology-wise. They just fucking shoot the shit out of them and they're out. And then at T'Pol's command, the Enterprise descends into the planet's atmosphere, and the patrols don't follow. Hoshi says they took heavy damage and are attempting to land. T'Pol comes to Trip, who is in a little shuttle pod, and she tells him that he's clear to launch. He leaves the Enterprise, and then they calm Malcolm, who is still in that little room with Travis, and they tell him that Trip is approaching. Just as Malcolm is acknowledging this, the door of their quarters flies open, and Clev, the prime goon, walks in and yells at them for not being outside for inspection. He does not recognize Malcolm as anything other than a generic Suliban. So Travis goes and Malcolm follows him. He turns his back to Clev, who takes that opportunity to shock stick Malcolm. Malcolm yelps, but he's okay. They keep it together. Travis just gives him a dirty look, and they leave, and they stand outside.
Malcolm says, "Harder, Daddy." What? No, you misheard me.
Yeah.
Does Malcolm actually speak at all?
Not to Clev, no.
Okay. Because then you'd think that Clev would figure it out, because presumably he wouldn't be speaking whatever their language was or whatever.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah, no, it doesn't seem like he does. So Clev says to everybody that if this happens again, they'll all be spending time in isolation, which... If they're all in isolation, then is it really isolation?
Yeah, I was like, how many isolation cells do they have?
Anyway, Clev starts to walk off, but Travis calls him back, and we get a little Travis being snarky moment. He says he doesn't mean to cause any trouble, but he was wondering if it would be possible to get some better food. Clev tells him to eat what he's given, and Travis keeps him talking for a bit. And Clev doesn't stick him or anything. He just yells at him. He starts to walk away, and Travis nods at Malcolm, who pushes a button on a device that he had in his bag. And as the guards are walking away, they see these green lighted beeping devices that are stuck to and lined up on the far wall. And then they walk towards them to see what's going on, and the beeping gets faster and faster. And then behind them, yeah, because you're going to walk faster towards the thing that's beeping quicker. That's a good idea, but whatever. But behind them, Malcolm and Travis are motioning to the Suliban in the corridor to get out of there. And they all run off. And as the guards turn around, Malcolm grins and he detonates the charges. And you guys, a perfectly round hole appears in the wall. Those charges were not placed in such a way that they would make a round hole. It's like Bugs Bunny painted a black spot on the wall and so suddenly it's a hole. It was exactly like that. Anyway.
Did any of the guards get hit by the explosion?
Yeah, they're in there. It takes them out. It knocks them out because they were right by the wall. Who knows if they died or not? Nobody cares. But all the Suliban, Travis, and Malcolm have gotten out of the way. They're all fine. Malcolm calms Trip to let him know that the wall is down, and Travis heads towards the hole in the wall, and Malcolm heads away, presumably to go find Archer. Trip flies in, and you just see him, like, shooting up the installation. He's, like, blowing up guard posts, and presumably he's blowing up the weapons and whatever. Inside, in the common room, Danik has his daughter. He's telling people to hurry up and get out. They're in that common area. He gets her out in front of him, but the guards come in the other door, and a Suliban behind Danik gets hit. Danik has a phaser, so he turns and he shoots at the guards, and then he crouches behind a barrel. And his daughter's out with another Suliban, yells for him, and he yells, he'll be fine, he'll be right there. And he tells the Suliban with her to take her and go. And he drags the injured Suliban behind some barrels.
For the fact that they are at war with a species that they consider to be very violent, they don't really have a lot of defenses in this internment camp.
Well, but they know these guys are not Cabal.
Yeah, but presumably there is Cabal. Like, presumably there is an actual military organization of some sort that they are at war with, that we know has, like, very advanced technology, and yet they have, like, basically no defense.
I mean, I feel like nobody knows where that planet is because they scrambled everything. They have patrol ships. They have guard posts. The Enterprise just has managed to take all of that out relatively easily. So I think it's more a situation where they just don't quite have the same level of technology.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going to do well in this war against the Suliban, who have like extremely advanced technology.
Right.
Listening to this has been exhausting.
Okay.
Maria, you really get the short end of the stick with all of our episodes.
So we're halfway through this episode, I'm assuming.
No. No, God, no. We're back in solitary with Archer, and the door opens, and a Suliban walks in, and Archer just grabs him and shoves him against the wall, but then he stops, and he looks at him, and he says, "Oh, it's good to see you, Malcolm." He recognizes Malcolm, and they start to leave, but just as Malcolm gets to the door, Grat shows up and shoots him, and hits him. He gets knocked out. I'm not sure how he got knocked out, but he gets knocked out by Grat, and he collapses. He collapses by the open door, and Grat attacks Archer. He holds him by the front of the jacket with a gun, and he says, "You have no idea what you've done. You haven't freed these people. You've condemned them." Okay, side note to Bill and other Quantum Leap fans. How weird must this have been for Dean Stockwell and Scott Bakula to be in a scene where they're actually touching each other and fighting? Anyway, meanwhile, Trip is still shooting at shit in the complex happily. Like, I think we're supposed to assume that these are specific targets, but it really looks like he's like, boom, boom, just shooting random shit.
Oh, that sounds like
blowing
Trip.
shit up.
Nope.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like Malcolm, but it's Trip in this situation. And Travis is still at the perfectly round hole, getting people out. Clev and his guards are presumably still passed out. People just seem to be stepping on them, stepping over them to get out.
Again, the Enterprise crew has started a war with another alien race that they've met for the first time.
Yeah. So just down the hall from Travis, suspicious Suliban is on a corner, and Danik's daughter runs up. She tells him that Danik is trapped back at the common area and needs help. Suspicious Suliban hesitates, and Travis runs up and says he'll go, but Suspicious Suliban says no, and he nods. Travis gives him his phaser and goes back to continue to help people, and Suspicious Suliban heads over to help Danik. Back in isolation, Grat has Archer still up against a wall with a gun at his chest, or maybe a shock stick. It's hard to tell. He's yelling at him about not having any right to interfere. And Archer says, it's not about his rights, it's about theirs. And Grat says, they have no rights. They lost them the moment the Cabal began to attack the Tendarans. He says that Archer just gave the Cabal 89 new soldiers. Archer keeps arguing with him as Malcolm comes to behind Grat, and Malcolm gets up and body slams Grat into the wall. They take his gun, and Archer raises it above his head like he's going to hit Grat, and Grat looks terrified, but Archer stops and just runs away, doesn't hurt him, just locks him in isolation.
Okay, so we got both of our truths, and you got me and Bill.
So, yes. So, well, we'll talk about this later. We see a bunch of ships flying out of the hangar, including the shuttle, which has Archer, Malcolm, and Travis all on board. Archer comes to T'Pol. He asks about the patrol ships, and T'Pol says they won't pose a threat. She also confirms that all the Suliban are leaving orbit. Travis looks thoughtful and asks the captain if he thinks they'll make it. And Archer says, do I think they'll get out of Tendaran space safely? Yes. Do I think they'll be all right? And then he fades off and doesn't continue, and end of episode.
Thank God.
So, overall impression. I think this was fun mostly because of Dean Stockwell, because it was really fun as a Quantum Leap fan to see them working together again. Although I wish that Dean Stockwell had been in the last episode, because that was about holograms, and it would have made so much more sense for him to be in that one. But I was actually kind of sad they didn't play on the Quantum Leap thing a bit more. Like, having Archer wake up and say, oh boy, would have been perfect, but that was the lie. But having them use his little box was cute. Yeah, it was fine. It was really heavy-handed.
Yeah, like, I see what they're trying to do, but I just feel like this show is not the show for this. Like, DS9 I might have been able to trust doing.
DS9 definitely did that because one of the primary antagonists were shapeshifters.
Right.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about. Like, DS9, it's just better at getting to
They were more nuanced.
Nuanced war situations.
Right.
And this show I don't trust with that.
This show wanted to talk about internment camps and how bad they are, and just wanted to slap us in the face with it. I mean, it was very heavy-handed.
But so here's the crazy thing. I understand that Enterprise is chronologically 100 years before the original series. However, it is 10 years after DS9.
Right.
So, and DS9 dealt with this issue of the enemy within. It's fucking crazy to me that Enterprise is such a fucking goofy show. I mean, every first season of a Star Trek show has growing pains as they figure out what's working, what's not working. But this is not Next Generation, which came out 15 years or 20 years after original series.
Right.
They had this to build on. And it's how fucking crazy this show is that they have no idea how to do a show about internment camps and about racial prejudice and all this stuff. This is
when they just did a whole show. Like, that's what DS9 was.
Exactly.
And they did it successfully.
Like, the messiness of war.
Saying, like, 2 years later, suddenly, like, the same people can't do a show with these topics. I'm slightly
impressed that this show decided to, we're going to be messy about this, but based on everything that has come from the previous dozen episodes that we've seen.
Yeah, impressed is not the word I would use. I
mean, they went big. They tried to go big, and more power to them. It sort of felt a little bit like Fusion, Jamie, where for some reason they decided to handle a big, heavy issue. And their intentions were good. I really think their intentions were good.
Oh, yeah.
They just didn't have the writing chops to be able to really handle this well.
I'm going to assume that this is a post 9/11 war on
It is.
Like, they're grappling with this. But it's fucking crazy considering that most of DS9 was a war on terror series.
Yeah.
That they had no emotional or memory of this.
But remember, they brought in a bunch of non-Star Trek writers for this, right? So, you know.
Yeah, it's also like if presumably they wrote this after 9/11 and they wrote it and then filmed it and got up, it must have meant that they were writing this right after 9/11.
Yeah,
like,
it would have been right after
they would have
9/11.
been like reeling from the events of 9/11 and like writing this in the aftermath. And I'm sure that to them, they felt like this was like very emotional and they're like, oh,
and right after 9/11, this was actually a fairly...
I mean, it could have gone other directions, so I'm glad that it didn't.
A fairly progressive take, let me put it that way, right? It feels like a fairly progressive take for 2001, 2002.
Maybe we shouldn't kill everybody in these countries just because of a couple terrorists. That feels like a really obvious thing to say.
But here's the thing, though, like watching it in November of 2024, literally 2 days before the election, feels really weird because, God damn it, if we don't have these same issues 20 years after this episode was made. Okay, yeah, they handled it poorly, or they handled it a little too heavy-handedly, I think, but it's still a relevant issue.
Yeah, I mean, it is true that we do have a presidential candidate who has talked many times about the need for internment camps against various people, and who, while president, set up the equivalent of internment camps at the southern border. So yeah, I see that it's relevant. I just don't feel like this
no, they didn't do a good job. I mean, it wasn't a good way to handle it. It made its point in a very basic way. Like, it was a very sort of black and white view.
The both sidism feels very 2002.
Exactly.
Here's what I think I'm trying to say is that I disliked DS9 because they went very dark, okay? They introduced a moral ambiguity into Star Trek, which I think what I enjoy about Star Trek, the original series and Next Generation, is that it is a utopian view, which is something we don't see a lot of in any science fiction, particularly now. It is easy to be dystopian, and DS9 particularly introduced like, oh, here's the dark side of Star Trek, here's the morally ambiguous. One of the things that they did particularly well is this is the gray area. This is the bad part of dealing with all of these other cultures. And I think the great failing in season 1, which is all we have seen thus far of Enterprise, is these characters cannot have the emotional weight of these stories put on them. Like, Enterprise is a child's adventure version of Star Trek. These characters cannot support the emotional weight of these stories.
I think that's absolutely right.
I appreciate that they're getting into a messy area, but the problem is Deep Space Nine exists. Deep Space Nine has dealt with these stories.
And the Enterprise writers were just not capable of really handling this in anywhere near the level of depth and nuance that Deep Space Nine did. That is a choice that Enterprise made by bringing in brand new writers. But we know that Star Trek can do this well. This was not an example of that.
Star Trek is not a topical show, and I feel like they're trying to be topical.
I don't know that I agree with you that Star Trek is not a topical show.
To me, they comment on things, but it doesn't seem like they're commenting on things that are happening right now.
I don't actually agree with that. I think that Star Trek has always tried to talk about current events, but in a much bigger, broader way, right? Like, big question.
Yes, it's still big. It's like current ideas, but not like a current event.
Yes, I think that the fact that this was so close to 9/11 muddies the waters a little. I don't know when this was written, but my assumption was it was written after 9/11. And I think, like all of us, they were trying to figure out what 9/11 meant, and it didn't have what we have now, which is, 20 years of knowledge of what's happened since then to be able to speak to what it should have been. I think that is the only grace I will give them, is that they tried to talk about a really relevant topic. Maybe they didn't do the best job of it.
All right.
But they tried. Okay. Porthos, good boy scale, and saucy scale are no-goes this week. No Porthos at all. And there were, like I said, almost no women in this episode. So there couldn't have been any sexy stuff because, as we all know, this is an incredibly heteronormative show. Like, if there are no women, there's no sexy.
Excuse me, Maria, Dean Stockwell was in this episode. How fucking dare you not have a sexy scale?
That is a good point. And Dean Stockwell was in this episode with Scott Bakula, and they did scenes together. Just talk about the quantum leap side of it. Kind of fun to see them as, antagonists as opposed to pals. Never asked, never answered. A couple things. We never actually see the suspicious Suliban rescue Danik. Like, he runs off with the phaser, and we're just supposed to assume everything went fine at that point.
Oh, yeah, I guess I forgot. So they got saved? Nobody died?
We assume that, but it never gets confirmed.
I really thought that the dad was going to die, and then suspicious Suliban was going to raise the daughter.
Yeah, no, not that complex of a show.
Okay.
Technical difficulties. The most technobabble thing from this episode. Let's talk transporters and sensors, people, because they seemed way more comfortable transporting people back and forth in this episode. And they were able to transport that communicator directly next to Archer, presumably because they picked up the human life signs. But if that was the case, why did Malcolm even have to look at a map to find Archer? Surely they could have just picked him up on sensors. And if they couldn't, surely they could have beamed him a phaser or something.
I just wish this show was not transporting, not using the transporter on humans. It would make the show so much more interesting.
What the creepiest thing that Phlox said in this episode, there was a scene where Phlox is like, I'm still not happy about the nose. I think you guys did not think this, but I think in that scene, we're supposed to assume that he's making them look like Tandarans because they have that thing above the nose. But I think they really wanted Suliban face Malcolm to be a fun surprise. Yes, chef. Any mention of chef or food? Travis definitely had a lot of opinions about the gruel they were being served.
Yeah, and it sounds like Chef Dorothy made it look gross.
Yeah, it looked gross.
I bet it tasted delicious.
Also, the daughter made them this proper lunch, and I had a lot of questions. There were potatoes and carrots in that stew. Where is this shit coming from? Okay, I can understand that maybe they have some sort of source for better food than what is given to them by the Tandarans, but how do they get fresh vegetables? That just doesn't seem like it. Anyway, all right. Will's Holorex. This is a segment of our show that we like to call Will's Holorex, where we each give our Rikermendations for non-enterprise related content that we've been consuming in our holodex this week. Bill,
my recommendation this week is an anime series called Spy X Family. It is a very funny show set in a 1960-ish East versus West Germany situation. There is a super spy who works for the good guys in the Democratic Society, but he's trying to prevent a war, and he is given an assignment where he has to infiltrate the evil fascist government and get close to a defense minister who has a child, and they tell him that the way to do this is to infiltrate the evil government and find a child and a wife so that his fake child can go to school and become besties with the defense minister's child. It gets better.
Wow.
So he finds this weird little girl she's going to be okay. He figures he can make it work. And then he finds this mousy office worker in the evil government who agrees to this fake marriage scheme. What the super spy doesn't know is that the office worker is actually a super assassin. And what neither of them knows is that the little girl is a telepath who knows exactly what they're thinking at every single moment. It is an amazing series. Spy X Family.
All right. Jamie, what do you have?
All right. My recommendation today is the HBO adaptation of the Neapolitan novels by Elena Ferrante called My Brilliant Friend. For anybody who has not read these books, which the first one is My Brilliant Friend, they are probably the best books I've ever read. The fourth one came out in English 10 years ago, and they're just absolutely phenomenal. And the series is an HBO series. It just ended. So the fourth season came out this year. So the whole thing is now out. And it's an incredibly good adaptation. It's very close to the books. If you haven't read the books and you're thinking about it, I would recommend reading the books first. Watching the show after reading the books, like it takes place a lot in Naples, and being able to actually see these neighborhoods and the houses. There's a lot in the books that isn't described a lot. It's kind of assumed that you know what these places look like because it was originally written in Italian for Italian audiences. So I really loved watching the show and being able to actually see everything. But also the performances are phenomenal. The show is in Italian and it's subtitled. The music in the show is great. The cinematography, everything. It's just an absolutely beautifully done show. It's about these two girls who grow up in Naples, and basically the rest of their lives through like their, I think, late 20s, or even maybe it goes into their 30s, and they take very different paths and yet parallel paths through their lives. It's just like human drama, and with the background of like things going on in Italy in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It's about small things because it's really just about these two girls, but it is just absolutely, absolutely phenomenal.
My recommendation is a Apple TV show called Shrinking, and it is from the creator of Ted Lasso, Bill Lawrence, and Jason Segel. It is about a psychiatrist who works with a group of other psychiatrists, one of whom is Harrison Ford. And Jason Segel's character decides that he is going to tell his patients what he actually thinks they should do, which is a terrible idea for a psychiatrist to do, and it's what happens there. It is fantastic and wholesome and lovely and a little dark, but also just really lovely to watch. The most recent season just started. It's a couple episodes in. Really fun. Shrinking on Apple TV. And that's the episode. Thanks for listening. Next episode, Bill will be talking about the episode Vox Sola. Special thanks to K.O. Myers at Particulate Media for sound assistance, to our friend David for the beautiful cover art he did for us, and to John Stephen King for being the voice of our computer. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on your podcast app of choice and tell your friends about it. We really appreciate it. You can follow us on Instagram at EnterpriseSplaining and on Blue Sky at EnterpriseSplain. You can also email us any comments or questions such as, was Danik ever planning to go back for his wife? Or to enterprisesplaining@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. If you want to support this podcast, you can find us at Buy Me a Coffee as Enterprise Splaining. We'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Computer and program.
Wait, sorry. Can you read what Steven's gonna say? Because the thing you showed me makes no fucking sense and I don't know what's going on still.
Ziggy!
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.